Today, Harvey and I will be giving a 60-second review of each team in the Premier League, ranking them from A+ to F. So starting off with Arsenal, as we're going in alphabetical order, and I'm giving the Gunners an A. Rice, Saliba, Odegaard, 3 brilliant performers this season. They've conceded less than last season, they've scored more than last season, and they've achieved more points. They are so unlucky not to win the league. They've only lost 1 game in 2024. Don't let people tell you they've bought the league, because they haven't. They've just come up against a Man City juggernaut.
And I have decided to give Arsenal a grade B. As Zach mentioned, there are many good reasons why they deserve a good grade, but the reason I've given them B is because they finished second, and at the end of the day, that was expected of them. Obviously, a grade C is an average grade, but I give them a grade B just because they were pretty much flawless this season. As Zach mentioned, they were much more stable than last season, and they took City to the final day, so a grade B is well deserved, but they didn't win the league, so not a grade A for me. And now moving on to Aston Villa, where I have given them a grade A, as getting top 4 has been a fantastic achievement for them, whilst playing Thursday nights too. Phenomenal for Aston Villa. Watkins has obviously been their top goal scorer. He has to have a special shout out for him. 37 appearances, 19 goals and 13 assists. Obviously he ended the season with the top assists in the Prem, and the fact that they've got Champions League football is because of him, as well as their home form as well. Aston Villa has one of the best home forms in the league this season. The fact they had 40 points gained at home in the Prem this season is fantastic, and for me, without a doubt, they get a grade A.
So I completely echo Harvey's thoughts, but for me, Emre and Villa deserve an A+, because Emre has been the best manager in the league this season in my opinion, and Watkins has been the best player in the league this season in my opinion. They have both been absolutely flawless. Emre's Villa team have completely mastered this system, and to play on Thursday nights and achieve top 4 at the same time is a remarkable achievement. So they undoubtedly deserve an A+ in my opinion. So moving on to the Cherries, and I have given Bournemouth an A. They have been absolutely brilliant this season. Iraola, apart from Emre, has been the best manager in the league. They only achieved 3 points from their first 9 games, yet they achieved 45 from their remaining 29. What a turnaround from Iraola. He's got them playing an expansive and a beautiful brand of football. Solanke, he's been absolutely brilliant up top as well, and Bournemouth have achieved their highest ever points tally in a Premier League season under the Spaniard. So they undoubtedly deserve an A.
And I completely agree with Zach. I have also given Bournemouth a grade A, undoubtedly deserved. They have been fantastic this season. Iraola, for me, has been manager of the season, and they have been fantastic, Bournemouth. He has got that side playing absolutely impeccable. Dominic Solanke also deserves a great shout out. 19 goals in the Premier League this season. He has been on top form. He's also the reason Bournemouth have had a great season, and for me, undoubtedly a grade A. And next up is Brentford, where I've given them a grade D, as they haven't had a fantastic season. And I mean, I know they've had Tony out, but me and Zach actually both put Brentford at 10th at the start of the season. So you could clearly see, despite having no Tony, we still had high expectations for them. And they finished 20 points worse off than last season. They finished 9th last season and 16th place this season. So not a great season for Brentford. They've stayed up, but a grade D, I think, is deserved for them.
In my opinion, I've given Brentford a C-, not as harsh as Harvey, but I can see why he gave that, because they have dropped off massively from the season before. But like Harvey said, they haven't had Tony for a large chunk of the season. In Bournemouth, he picked up a big injury as well, and they lost Wright in the summer on loan to Arsenal. So that's their 3 best players that they didn't have for a large bulk of the season. So that is obviously going to affect your team, which is why I didn't give them a too harsh rating. However, I couldn't give them a much higher rating because they still finished in 16th place. So moving on to the Seagulls, and for Brighton, I've given them a B-, which is quite respectable when you think about where they finished. They finished 11th, 14 points worse off than last season, but they lost McAllister and Caicedo, their 2 best players in the summer, as well as having to contend with Europe this campaign. So to still finish 11th on 48 points is a very respectable season for De Zerbi. Yes, nothing amazing, but still respectable, and that's why I've given them a B-, and I haven't entered into the C, D or E category.
I've been a little bit more harsh on Brighton, and I've given them a grade C-. And as Zach mentioned, they did finish in the bottom half, which is a significant drop-off compared to where they were last season. And they have had an injury crisis, I do understand that, but 4 wins in 19 games away from home is a serious damning statement, whether you have injuries or not. And the fact that not a single player at the club has scored double digits this season in the Prem is, again, another damning statement. And for me, a grade C- is deserved for Brighton. And moving on to the Clarets, where I have given Burnley a grade F, as they finished 19th in the league this season. They were relegated in embarrassing fashion, and they fell way under expectations, as many people actually had them to stay up, or at least give a good account of themselves, but they did far from that. They fell way under expectations, and they've been absolutely awful. The fact they conceded 78 goals and only had 2 clean sheets in the Premier this season, well, that shows everything, to be honest. They've been awful this season, and they'll be going down, and that is why they've got a grade F.
So for Burnley, I'm going to give them a D-, not quite the F that Harv gave, but still a very bad grade. Company Bull, it had a lot of expectations. Everyone thought Burnley would finish in a respectable position this season, but they didn't. Like Harvey said, they conceded loads, they barely scored as well, and they struggled to build consistency, so that is why I have given them a D-. And moving on to Chelsea, and I've given Pochettino's side a B-, and that may seem very generous because they have spent an eye-watering amount of money in the past 2 windows, but to get that many players to gel in one season and get them into Europe is a respectable achievement. And at the start of the season, yes, they were very up and down and they were very poor for large parts, but near the end, they started to pick up form and they became a really good side, winning 7 from their last 10 games, getting into Europe. Palmer has been one of the best players in the league this season, and you're finally starting to see Pochettino's team starting to click, which is why I've given them a B- and not any lower.
I have decided to give Chelsea a grade C, as 6th place is a respectable achievement. It's actually where many people had them, or in and around that area. They either had them a little bit above or a bit below, including myself. I actually had them 5th, so a little bit higher, but 6th place is a respectable achievement for Chelsea. It's where most people would have them at the start of the season. Obviously, Cole Palmer being a stand-up player, he's the reason that they got 6th place, 34 appearances, and he had 22 goals and 11 assists in the Prem this season, as well as winning the Young Player of the Year award, and absolutely deserved. As well as Jackson, actually, he hit 14 goals this season, so he's actually also a part of the reason why Chelsea did finish 6th, but mainly Cole Palmer. But 6th place, at the end of the day, it is a respectable achievement. Grade C for Chelsea, I think, is well deserved. And now we have Crystal Palace, where the Eagles finished 10th, and that for me is deserved of a grade B+. And since Glasner came in, they've been fantastic, and for me, he's without a doubt the best managerial appointment of the season, and he is the reason they've been led to a joint highest points tally ever in the Prem. And since he came in, they've been ranked 4th in the Prem with only Chelsea, Arsenal and Man City above them. So that goes to show how good of a job he's done, and he is the reason that I've given Crystal Palace a grade B+.
For me, Crystal Palace deserve a B. Not quite a B+, because they were very poor under Hodgson, and that was for the large bulk of the season. But under Glasner, they've been brilliant. As Harvey said, they've only lost 3 from their final 13 matches. Brilliant form there. Mateta, Eze, Elise, they've all been on fire this season. And if Palace keep the large bulk of their squad, I think they could push for Europe next season, because they have got a very good squad and a very, very good manager at the helm, as we've seen since he was appointed. And moving on to Sean Dyche's Everton, and I've given them a C+, and they've been brilliant this season in patches, but also woeful. But the stat of the season for Everton is that only City, Arsenal and Liverpool have conceded less goals than the Toffees this season, which is a truly remarkable achievement considering where they finished in the league. And if it wasn't for their points deduction, they would have finished so much higher. So to suffer a points deduction and still stay in the league with plenty of games to spare is a really respectable achievement. Sean Dyche, he's done wonders this season in many aspects, keeping Everton up with that watertight defence, but they have looked lacklustre going forward and they have been woeful in patches, which is why they don't go up into the B category and stay at the peak of C.
I have also given Everton a grade C+, as they managed to survive relegation super comfortably despite that huge points deduction that they received earlier in the season. And that stat that Zach mentioned earlier is certainly stat of the season. And I've also got another stat, the fact that Arsenal have only had more clean sheets than Everton this season in the Premier League, adding further to the point that their defence has been fantastic and rock solid this season, and Sean Dyche has certainly built a great foundation at Everton, and for me it's a very, very good season for Everton, and that is why they get a grade C+. And now taking a trip back to London, where we have Fulham, and I've given them a grade C, as they've had a decent season. They finished 13th in the end, and I thought that they could potentially get drawn into a relegation battle after they lost Mitrovic, but they've managed without him just fine, and Fulham have actually scored the same amount of goals this season as last season when they had Mitrovic. There's only 1 goal difference in it, actually. So for me, Fulham have had a pretty decent season, and they get a grade C.
I totally agree with Harv. Fulham have had an average season, to say the least. A grade C is more than justifiable. They haven't been poor, they haven't been amazing. Paulinho and Robinson have been the 2 standout performers, and Marco Silva has done the job once again. So yes, a grade C is deserved. Moving on to the team that I support. So what grade have I given us? I've given Liverpool a grade B, and that may seem very respectable considering the way we capitulated at the end of the season. However, Klopp completely revamped his midfield last summer. He brought in Endo, McAllister, Szoboszlai and Gravenberch, and got rid of the captain Henderson, Milner, Fabinho, Keita and Chamberlain, and still managed to finish 3rd. Pep and Arteta, try that. Try and revamp your whole midfield and still finish 3rd place and still push the other 2 teams right down to the wire. Yes, we weren't in it on the final day, but up until mid-April, we were right in this title race with a completely new midfield compared to the previous season. That is a remarkable achievement from Jurgen Klopp. But like I said, it's not a B+ or an A because of the way we capitulated. It was just really, really poor.
I have given Liverpool a grade C+, as 3rd is a respectable finish, and it is a finish where everyone pretty much expected them to finish at the end of the season. And the reason I've given them a plus is because they were in the title race for so long, and it was on the verge of being a B, as they were on the cusp of finishing first or being around there. But the way they capitulated, I had to put that down, and that is why I've given them a C+. But a huge shout out to Mohamed Salah, as many people have been criticising him, but the fact that he's put 18 goals and 10 assists up this season shows that he's still a top player, and he's also contributing to Liverpool's third place finish. And now moving on to the Hatters, Luton Town, and I've given them a grade D. Yes, they did give a good account of themselves, and they did fight until almost the last day to stay up, and I do respect that. You do have to respect that, to be honest. But you simply cannot have stats like these where you're conceding 85 goals in a single season. That is an average of 2.2 goals conceded per match. And the fact that Forest stayed up with one of the lowest points tally the Prem's ever seen is a damning statement for Luton, and that is why I've given them a grade D.
For Luton Town, I have given them a B-. And before you start typing saying, Zach, how can you give a team that got relegated a B-? Look at their expectations. A lot of people predicted them to finish 19th or even 20th. Some people said they would finish on less points than Derby County did all those years ago. Yet they were so close to clinching survival. At Kenilworth Road, Luton only lost by 1 goal to Chelsea, Arsenal and Man City, and they drew to Liverpool at home as well, over exceeding everybody's expectations there. The home fans would galvanise their home players, and those players would run that extra yard for Rob Edwards. So in my eyes, a B- is a very, very fair grade for Luton Town. Moving on to the blue half of Manchester, where Manchester City managed to win the title for a 4th season in a row, so they undoubtedly deserve an A. Amid the 115 charges, the football that was displayed on the pitch this season was truly brilliant at times. Yes, they were shaky in defence, maybe more so than recent seasons, but they got the job done efficiently and excellently, and Foden, what a player, easily one of the best players in the league this season, and yeah, an A is a very respectable achievement and a very respectable grade for Pep Guardiola's side.
I've also given Manchester City a grade A. As they did win the league, they are the champions, and a grade less than that should not be expected. 91 points is a very respectable tally, and the fact they didn't lose a game since the 6th of December, and that was a loss where they lost to Villa 1-0. So the fact they haven't lost for that long, haven't lost this calendar year in the Premier League, is a very, very, very crazy stat. And also a big shout out to Phil Foden. As Zach was saying, he's been phenomenal this season. 19 goals and 8 assists in the Prem this season, and he did step up whilst De Bruyne has been injured for a majority of the season. And that is a fantastic achievement for him. Getting Player of the Year, and Manchester City a grade A, that is deserved. And now moving on to the red side of Manchester, where we have Manchester United, and I've given them a grade D-. And I'm sure Erik ten Hag would not be happy to hear the fact that Manchester United have had their worst ever finish to a Premier League season, even worse than David Moyes' season where they finished 7th, and they've ended the season with a minus goal difference for the first time in the Prem era, and that is a shocking statement for Man United. They've been terrible, and they have finished outside the European places, which no one would have expected, and I think that is worthy of a grade D-.
I completely agree with Harv, and I've given Man United a D- as well. They have been far below par this season. Yes, injuries haven't helped them and it has damaged them considerably, but they can see goals like a sieve. They can barely put the ball in the back of the net, and they look completely disjointed. They have no discipline, no tactical discipline. They don't even know what system they're playing half the time. They have been utterly poor and utterly shocking, and yeah, a D- is completely justifiable. And moving on to Newcastle, and I have given the Toon a B-. Yes, that may seem quite respectable considering they finished 11 points worse off from last season, but their squad has been littered with injuries this campaign, so to still finish in a European place is truly remarkable. So yes, a B- is a fair grade in my opinion.
I've given Newcastle a grade C+, just below Zach's grade, because I do feel 7th was around where they're expected to finish, but the amount of injuries they have had and the fact that Eddie Howe has managed to deal with them and get them into the European spots is a remarkable achievement. However, 11 losses in 19 away from home has costed Newcastle a Europa League place and has costed them a grade in my books, which is obviously very important to Newcastle. But obviously they've had a serious injury crashes, as I mentioned, so 7th place isn't a bad finish, and I do think C+ is a fair grade for them. Moving on to Nottingham Forest, who have just survived this season with a points tally of 32, taking them to 17th position, and that, for me, has earned them a grade C+. As many people did expect them to be in the relegation battle, but they also did expect them to stay up. But the fact that they had the points deduction and they still managed to stay up despite having that, for me, earns them a grade C+. And also a big shout out to Chris Wood, who's got 14 goals in the Premier League this season, and that is a remarkable tally. I don't think many people would expect that. So the fact that he's hitting double-figure goals like that in this season goes to show he has been crucial for them and crucial for Forest and their survival in the Prem.
I echo Harvey's thoughts. However, I'm going to give Nottingham Forest a C, not a C+, because they didn't push upon from last season. However, they did lose Brennan Johnson in the summer window. Aouni's picked up many injuries, and they had that points deduction. So in many regards, a C+ is a very fair result. And obviously, Chris Wood was banging goals for fun this season. But like I said, they didn't push upon from last season. They didn't build upon that, and they didn't strive up the table. And they had to sack Cooper, which did mean that they did experience some turmoil this season. So yeah, a C for me is a pretty fair representation. And moving on to possibly the worst team I have ever seen in Premier League history, Sheffield United. They undoubtedly deserve an F. They have conceded 104 goals this season. No team in Premier League history has ever conceded more than that, and they've only won 3 matches this whole campaign. That is utterly shocking, and they completely deserve a grade F.
I completely echo Zach's thoughts on Sheffield United, and I've also given them a grade F. They've been absolutely dreadful this campaign, and they've been the worst side I've ever seen in the Premier League in my lifetime, and they're only 5 points off the worst team in Premier League history, Derby County, and they've showed absolutely nothing this season. No fight, no literally nothing, and they've been dreadful, and they undoubtedly deserve a grade F. And next up is my club, Tottenham Hotspur, and I've given them a grade C+. Considering the expectations that were laid upon us at the start of the season, I do think it definitely is worthy of a C+. No one really expected us to finish in the top 6, and certainly no one expected us to finish 5th, and the fact that we finished comfortably in the top 6 definitely deserves a grade C+, but the capitulation towards the end of the season definitely bumps down the grade. It certainly puts it down to a C+, but the fact that we finished 5th sets us up well. We're in the Europa League. That could be a competition that we could win with the new format, and that could be a trophy that Ange could win for the future. So we're definitely set up well for the future. A great first season for Ange, and the fact that we finished 5th, exceeding people's expectations, definitely is worthy of a grade C+.
I'm going to give Tottenham Hotspur a grade B because Postecoglou has massively overachieved in his first season, and not in a bad way. Tottenham have had an injury-ridden season. The amount of players that have been injured for Tottenham is ridiculous, and the amount of inconsistent players they've had is a joke, and he still managed to get them into 5th position and into Europe, which is truly, truly remarkable. Tottenham's back four and their goalkeeper have had a good season, despite the fact they've conceded an abundance of goals. It's the protection in front of them, which has cost them numerous times, and defending from set pieces. So yes, there is still a lot more to work on with Postecoglou, but to achieve 5th place in your first season in charge, despite the fact you've had injuries and inconsistent performers, is brilliant. And that's why Tottenham and Postecoglou willingly deserve a grade B. For West Ham, I'm going to give them a grade C. And let me tell you, Moyes, you are lucky to achieve a grade C because this season you've conceded 74 goals in the Premier League. Only the bottom 3 teams have conceded more than you, and you build your philosophy around sitting deep and hitting on the break, so you shouldn't really concede that many goals at all. You've relied heavily on Bowen, you've relied heavily on Kudus. Those two have carried you this season. You get hammered every other week, excuse the pun. Fulham, Arsenal, Chelsea, they pepper you, they put goals past you, and you have been really poor. So a C is undoubtedly a fair grade for West Ham, and you could even go lower without too much complaints.
I've given West Ham a grade C-. Similar to Zach's reasoning, he's pretty much listed all the reasons that I would have. They've been shocking defensively this season, and the way that Moyes plays, you do not want to be conceding 74 goals this season. That is atrocious. But I will put a slightly positive spin on it with the grade C- that I've given. 9th place isn't really too bad of a finish for West Ham. It's an improvement on last season. And the last season for David Moyes, I think a 9th place finish is kind of expected of them, a mid-table finish in the top half. So it's pretty decent, but with how much they've been conceding and just how poor the style of football it is around West Ham or around David Moyes' philosophy and the mood around West Ham's camp with the fans, I think a C- is a fair representation. And finally, we have Wolves, and I've given them a grade C+, just because they've managed to stay up comfortably, and even myself, I put them down to go down, just like many others did. They all put them either to go down or around that area, and the fact they've stayed up by 20 points is definitely a great achievement for them, but the fall-off towards the end of the season definitely is something to be discussed, and that is why I've bumped their grade down. 7 losses in the last 10 is a massive tail-off, and that bumps them down a little bit, similar to the Tottenham and Liverpool grades that I've given, and that is why a C+ is a fair grade for Wolves.
Gary O'Neill joined Wolverhampton Wanderers less than a week before the season started. Matthias Nunes, arguably Wolves' best player, was sold to Manchester City during the same summer, yet Gary O'Neill got Wolves cooking on all cylinders. Pedro Neto, 9 assists and 20 league appearances this season. Hwang and Kuna, 12 goals each in the Premier League. They have been absolutely class. Tommy Doyle, what a player he's been in midfield. Kilman and Dawson at the back. two brilliant centre-backs, and Gary O'Neill has produced a brilliant outfit that have achieved so much this season, and I'm giving them a grade B. It could even be a B+ if they didn't tail off towards the latter end of the season, but the main reason why they did tail off was because they knew they were safe. They took their foot off the gas because they knew that they were going to be in the Premier League the following season. However, they were so close to Europe, so maybe if they didn't take their foot off the gas, they might have even been in a better position. But let me tell you, Gary O'Neill, in such a short period of time, what he's done is truly remarkable, and he's fully deserving of that grade B.